A few videos back on the channel I reviewed this, which is the Eachine FB90. Now, I liked it, but it does have some areas in need of improvement. So, as it's trying to be a tiny whooper, it has the tiny whoop style fan blades, which work, but don't offer much thrust for an 8mm motor. To help with that, it has a 2-cell battery, but with no balance port for decent charging. It comes with CleanFlight installed, but no easy way to access the USB port if you want to change any of the settings. Furthermore, you have to remove the top canopy to access the bind pads, which you have to short with a pair of tweezers while powering up the flight controller. It flew nicely though, and accurately, and it's perfect for indoor flying. Now, it was quite noisy, and with that canopy up top being very light and plastic, it rattles around quite a bit. So, GearBest have come up with this. It's called the Furibee Wasp F90, and they have taken note of all of these issues. They have ditched the fan blades, realizing that they don't currently work with 8mm motors, and replaced them with the 3-blade Hubsan propellers. Now, the 3-blade Hubsan props worked pretty terribly on the Hubsan models. They gave less thrust than a 2-blade prop and reduced flight times by half. However, on this 2-cell setup, they will provide much more thrust than the fan blades and should be more efficient sat in these ducts theoretically, so I'll have to check that out in the flight. With the Eachine model, people were taking the 3-blade props and then cutting them down to get them to fit inside the ducts, but there's no need with this one. They have made the ducts bigger to accommodate for that. The ducts do look as flimsy though, and I imagine in a hefty crash they will break. Luckily, you can buy them as spares, but they do seem to be part of the motor mount system and not detachable, so that's a downside there. Moving on to the battery, it is a 400mAh 2-cell, but you will notice it has a balance port for proper charging, and it's also using a JST connector this time to allow more current to flow to the flight controller and therefore the motors. The battery fits very snug into this holder as well. There is only one battery included in this package though, which is a shame, unlike the two that you got with the Eachine variant. The main frame of the quad is carbon fibre. The 8.5mm motor wires have been strapped in using some kind of tape fabric, but it's not that effective and it's coming apart in places. The same fabric has been used to secure in the flight controller and also the camera, and those are in pretty solid, so it seems to be much more effective for that application. You will notice that this Wasp has quite a sting, which is of course the antenna for the 5.8 GHz video transmission, this time appearing outside of the quadcopter for better reception. This attaches to a 600 TV line all-in-one 40-channel 25mW VTX camera combo with a wide-angle lens at the front for FPV. Also at the front we have this antenna. Sadly it's just a fake to make it look like an insect. I would like to have seen this being the antenna for the control, but sadly that's tucked away inside the canopy. Speaking of the canopy, this time we have a thicker plastic which is very sturdy and is screwed into the frame, which means no rattling around when flying this one. There's also a cutout in the side, meaning that you can access the USB port for the flight controller, which comes with Betaflight 3.01 already installed on it, so there's no need to mess about with that. In fact, with this model there's no need to take the canopy off at all. The included DSM-2 receiver is set to bind automatically every time the quadcopter is turned on. I did find this to be a bit of a pain, however, as it means you have to bind your transmitter to it every time you want to fly. I did take the canopy off to see if there was something shorted on the tiny receiver or flight controller, but nothing was, so we are stuck with it having to bind every single time. The antenna on the receiver is tiny as well, and I was only getting around 50 meters of range out of it, so this receiver is definitely a bottleneck in this package. Luckily, it's easily replaceable and not built into the flight controller, so I will probably switch it out for a FreeSky one. You can also see that there's a built-in buzzer on this flight controller, which is set up as a voltage buzzer when the battery gets low. However, I have also programmed a switch on my transmitter as a lost model alarm in Betaflight. I will show you how to do that in the configurator. Without a battery, it's weighing 46 grams, and with a battery, it's 67 grams, which is about right for a 2-cell brushed setup. The contents of the package are pretty minimalistic. We just have a 2S balance charger, a spare set of props, and a decent manual, which is all you need, really. Everything fits in the box constructed, which is nice for storing away. For FPV, I'm using my Fat Shark Dominator V2s, and the transmitter is my Taranis with an Orange RX module. Let's go into Betaflight and see what's up there. I have got expert mode enabled at the top there to access the failsafe options. Then you can calibrate the quad's accelerometer on the first page. Make sure it's sitting flat when you do this, of course. Next is the ports tab, and everything should be set up for you here already. The receiver is set up on UART2 under serial RX. Onto the configuration tab, and I didn't have to change anything here at all. These are all defaults. Failsafe was set to drop, which is correct for me, and it worked fine without any changes. PIDs I have also kept stock. It flies nice with the stock PIDs, and that is hardly a surprise when using Betaflight. I did bump my rates up to 0.8, however. Next is the receiver tab, and I had to change the channel map, but that was it. Then under the modes, I set up an arming switch on AUX2 and my usual angle, horizon and acro on a 3-position switch. Then down here I set up an AUX3 for a lost buzzer alarm, and that's it. I will just go into the CLI and type version so you can see what it has come flashed with. So let's go and fly. Okay, let's go for a takeoff. Another fantastic day for weather. As you can see, completely fogged out, but at least it's not raining, eh? This thing just seems so much more quieter than the Ishin, so we don't have any rattles coming from the prop guards or the canopy, which is good. Let's go for a punch out. Oh, that is much better. They have really taken note of what needed improving with this one and made the correct changes. Let's have a look at this thing. So I've kept that little antenna on the top that does nothing, that makes it look like a wasp or a bee. I will be taking that off for sure. Okay, acro, let's see how it does. Should be better. Oh yes! So plenty of power this time, not having to gain lots of height to do some rolls because it's just got the power. In fact, I could probably get it to do a roll pretty close in, and yes, very stable. Even when I get it wrong, there's enough power to pull out of it. Oh, this flies very nice, and the stock tune seems pretty good as well. So I'll have to try out the FPV with the stock tune and see how I get on. Hope you can see that. The fog is quite intense today. I'm struggling to see it myself. Oh, this is fantastic. So much control. I really like it. Let's bring it in for a landing and let's do some FPV with it. So fog isn't an ideal condition to be showcasing FPV, but I wanted to show you that if you wanted to, you could fly acro with this, and you'll see it does rolls and flips quite nicely. However, it doesn't take a long time for the FPV camera to condense up, and eventually it becomes much foggier than it was, and that is because there is water gathering on the lens as I fly through the fog. But you can see rolls and flips quite nicely, and of course Betaflight as well. Now that is about as far as I can get away from myself. It's about 50 meters, and I don't know if this is just me, but I tend to find that when it's foggy I have less range. Now I guess technically there is something in the way of the signal creating a barrier, but obviously I didn't think it would be that strong, so maybe it's just a sort of in my head sort of thing. But there you go. Only 50 meters with this one, so I think I will be switching out that receiver. And you can see here that just like the eSheen version, I'm able to be really accurate and thread the needle, and the reception on the video is really clear as well, so that's good to see. I think that antenna at the back definitely helping. Yeah, this is a fun one, this one. However, like I say, not so fun in the fog, so I'm trying my best to slow it down so that I don't get any moisture on the lens, but it doesn't last for very long. But you can see even when it starts to fog up, I'm able to thread the needle through these trees, and that is what I was getting out of the eSheen model, and this model is doing it again fine. You can see I can bash into stuff as well, no problem, and it doesn't really affect the flight characteristics of the aircraft. For the flight time, I was getting a 4.5 minute flight time before the beeper was starting to sound, and then I found the aircraft starting to bog down a little bit as well, so I never really waited until the battery fully ran out, but I thought a 4.5 minute flight time was ample. So you can see the moisture building up here on the camera as it looks more foggy, but it's still flyable, and I have to say the moisture didn't affect the aircraft at all. I imagine it would eventually, but a couple of flights, no problem. You can see, still able to thread the needle. Anyway, I think I'm going to come in for a landing and do some FPV indoors. So there you go, that is my review of the Furibee F90. I'll put a link in the description if you wish to get one. As always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.
In the end, when the winter comes, we turn our backs, we can't help, we're gone.